but we're basically looking at the question of the difference between demand and quantity demanded. And so I've got my set of notes here, and I'm going to just take a quick pause. I just need to get a drink and everything. I can tell I'm going to have trouble getting through everything, so I'll be right back. All right. So we're looking at demand versus quantity demanded. And the first thing to understand is that if you're looking at these words in your textbook for the first time they're printed, they're going to be bold, both of them. So demand is going to be bold, and then you'll probably see a couple sentences later, quantity demanded in bold. And that's going to tell you each of those are specific vocabulary, key terminology that need to be understood separately. And it's a little trickier because you're really just using, it sounds like you're kind of talking about the same thing. From an individual consumer's perspective, it kind of sounds like maybe you're talking about the same thing. So I went ahead and tried to come up with an analogy that works all the way through. And so what I've got is a song and a note. So if you are talking about a song, in one individual note within that song is definitely a part of that song, but it isn't the entire song. So when we say the quantity demanded, it's a point on the demand curve, is really, we can kind of tap it. But it's not the entire line. The entire line is a representation of some factors that we're going to put together. And so the entire song is a representation of all of the notes, and an individual note is like a quantity demanded point on the song as the demand curve. And so the demand is coming from, the demand curve isn't you. And it's coming from a lot of different factors. It's going to be the income of the consumers, the number of buyers, tastes and preferences, expectations about the future, and the price of related goods like substitutes and complements. And we talked about those a little bit. But the big thing is if those factors are demand, then one of those things is going to have to change for us to draw a new line elsewhere on our diagram. And we traditionally say we're shifting the line because it's changing from one form to another. But in reality, we're looking at a snapshot and our buyers have a certain level of income. And now 6 months later, we're going to look at a snapshot and say policy has changed and therefore buyers all have 30% more income available. So the demand line that we're drawing now is going to be an entirely different line. And traditionally we're shifting it, we're keeping them parallel. That's a simplistic thing that we're doing to make things a little easier to package, a little easier to work with. But the idea is that when one of these factors changes, what we call determinants of demand, we're drawing a new demand line and it looks like it's shifted from its original position. And you're a part of that, but you're not the line. One consumer isn't the line of demand unless it's, in normal circumstances. When we're talking about ramen today, you aren't the line for sure. Quantity demanded is the number of ramen that you're going to put in your cart at each price, and we're assuming that none of the above is changing. So we'd say ceteris paribus, and the idea is that all other things constant, you're going to see a different quantity of ramen put in my cart based on what the sticker says on the shelf. And so I always tell students to imagine you're standing in front of the shelf looking at the product you're about to buy. Today we're looking at ramen. And our objective is to spend the last $10 to get us enough food to kind of, for an emergency, uncertainty kind of thing. I don't want to say how long I'm going to try to survive on ramen, but the idea is that we're going to spend all our money on ramen to maximize our survivability right now. So when we get to the store, if ramen is $1, we can put 10 packets in our cart. And so our attitude hasn't changed about ramen. The $10 bill in our pocket didn't change. The number of, whether or not we decided to be a buyer of ramen did not change. So that would be where our contribution is to the number of buyers. How we feel about ramen hasn't changed. What we expect about the future in this circumstance has not changed. And in this case, we're kind of somewhat ignoring that, but we're also just holding that the prices of other possibilities aren't different. It's just that ramen is $1. That's what we're looking at. So we can put 10 in the cart. If while we're standing there looking at our cart, we see the worker come by and he says, I got the wrong sticker in front of the ramen. It's actually supposed to be 50 cents. So now that the price tag says 50 cents, we can actually put 20 in the cart. And nothing again has changed about our income, the number of buyers, taste preference, expectations, or the price of related goods or complements. And we're going to continue this process, mentally imagining we can put 40 in the cart, and now we can put 100 in the cart, and now we can put 200. 20 times 2. Yeah. 200 in the cart, and then 1,000 in the cart. So the idea is that none of the other factors, the things that we call demand, are changing. And that's why the quantity demanded is changing, because the price has changed. So quantity demanded is the number of on the y-axis based on the changes in the price. So I guess it's the x-axis, but the quantity axis is quantity demanded, and it matches up with a bundle of prices so those price and quantity combinations, when we map them out, we would end up with a line. So yeah, we just put 10 in the cart, put 20 in the cart. And this would be a line that now represents our demand. And that's the demand curve. And these numbers that I'm moving around a little bit are different quantities demanded at different prices. So I think that the helpful way of kind of disconnecting it is that the demand as an individual terminology of vocabulary isn't something you can do all on your own. You can't carry the torch of demand by yourself. So you are looking at the price and picking a quantity that you demand. And the way that demand is changing is when one of these 5 factors, the cash in your pocket, or the size of your paycheck, the amount of income you get, the number of people looking to buy something. So if more people decide to start shopping at a business because they've decided to hire a local sports celebrity as their spokesman, then that's going to increase the number of buyers, kind of as a way, because of their tastes and preferences for maybe supporting that local business. So it's kind of two factors there in the determinants of demand. But this is like to go back and answer the question that was referred to: what happens to demand when the price of the product increases? The question is asking what happens to these factors, not this. So we're asking, has the income of consumers changed when the price changed? It has not. Has the number of buyers changed? It has not directly. The preferences and tastes, expectations, price of related goods. In all of these scenarios, we were changing the price, and quantity demanded changes. Demand does not. The demand line stays in the exact same spot, continuing to exist. So back to our song and note analogy. What happens to the song when the spot and the song changes? When you skip ahead 10 seconds. Are you listening to a new song? Is there anything different about this song? No, you're listening to a different note. If we were wanting to change the song, we would need to maybe shift the pitch, speed up the tempo, something like that. And so that's the idea, that changing demand requires changing a determinant of demand. And so when the price changes, we're moving to a different quantity demanded, but we are not moving, shifting, changing anything about our demand curve as it exists.